Andy, just so you're aware, and Duncan, I cannot see the chat box or anything the way that my screen's set. So
it's all right. I've got it open and monitoring it. So if there's
that's
anything crops up, I'll bring it in.
Without further ado, we'll move over. So basically, there's three sections. First slide really is importance, philosophy of the workshop. Then really we go into the format and the sort of the meat of, shall we say, the briefing that we got today. And then just a small section really on feedback from the workshops, which will also include some of the forms. And then we go into some other bits and pieces of events coming up shortly. Away we go then. So importance, philosophy of the workshops here. So way back when we started this, there was a lot of issues between different areas, between instructors, examiners, area chief examiners, as to what the test really is. And there was quite a bit of inconsistency at that time. And although nothing could be proven at that time, it was sort of agreed by several of us that really we needed to find a way and a means of actually, trying to get consistency between the areas, but also, as it says there, to pass on changes, new requirements. So some of the things that have been going on recently with the changes, new legislation, etc., they're ideal events to start passing that and also get people's interpretation such that we can all actually then focus on, well, this actually is what's actually going. So the exchange of views. And also, as we're going through the documents, write them down where we find errors so that we can advise the Achievement Scheme Review Committee that, hey, we think this might need rewording. It doesn't really read very well, or it could be misinterpreted and things like that. Okay, so everything that we're going through, there's lots of support material on the BMFA website in particular. You'll be able to click on this link and you'll see all, in fact, when we go through the presentation a bit later on, I will be clicking on this link so you can actually see some of the material that's there. And it really will hopefully be of great help to those of you that are actually putting on events. Okay, so running a workshop, program and content. So really what you need to do here is sort of discuss within your area what you want to focus on. Is it fixed wing? Is it helicopters? Is it both? Do you want to do multi-rotors? Are you just looking at A certificates? Are you going to do A, then B, fixed wing, and then in the afternoon, A, then B, multi-rotor, for example? So really you need to look at what's most appropriate for your area. You also sort of want to set out a program such that not only have you got the sort of the work through of looking at the documents, but also having the display pilot go through those manoeuvres. But then you might want to say, well, after the fixed wing, for example, you might want to do some tests, or during lunch you have some sort of flying events or whatever. So make sure you've got your structure well planned out, and make sure you've got plenty of time for each of the segments as you go through. Certainly some of the events that I've been to, there's been issues with timing where they've overrun, which is good, but if you're then trying to rush at the end to try and finish things off, that obviously doesn't bode well, or it can be problematical. Funding. Since the early days, things regarding funding of events has actually become a lot easier. First off, within the constitution of each of the areas, it actually says that areas should be putting on workshops, should be promoting our sport, and with the current rounds of funding, the Treasurer and ONSEC are actually promoting put within your budgets funding to put on workshops. Okay, this year is going to be quite different as much that, so for example, my area is the money that we put in for the workshops, we won't be able to use, but everybody will understand that we won't be able to put those workshops on, and then the funding will be back in next time. You might be able to get some support funding when we come to some of the bits and pieces regarding advertising. I'll talk about that in a moment.
John, can I just chip in? I think that's it's very important to stress that point that at BMFA Council there's been recognition of the need to fund areas so that they can run workshops. So it's even though recently there's been a lot of scrutiny over area budgets, as I'm sure some of you will know, this has especially been identified and ring fenced that there will always be money available for areas to be able to run workshops. So cool. I'll shut that now.
No, thank you for amplifying that. Venue. Okay, so where geographically within your area you're going to put it? Now, if it's just going to be a one-off, then really you need it central such that everybody can get to it. But a lot of the areas now are actually doing at least one, maybe two, some actually doing 3 workshops per year. And then you need to make sure that you're sharing your hosting around the area to make sure, distance-wise, people are actually then able to get to them. Also, I think it's really good, certainly I know within our area, to move things around. Certainly my club likes hosting them. I know quite a few other clubs really enjoy bringing people into their club and letting them use the facilities, but also the benefits that they're actually getting for their instructors, examiners, and also those that are actually getting themselves ready for tests can actually benefit so much from these workshops. Some of the things that you need to do within the venue as well is sort of request the host that there's some sort of shelter, whether it be a marquee or a simple gazebo or whatever. So it's that when you're sat down with everybody, you're sheltered from the sun, knowing us lot, the rain, sort of as you're dashing in and out to do the different manoeuvres. You hope the rain stops, etc. You know what it's like. We're in England, say the United Kingdom. So there we go. Other things that can happen, for example, you may ask to have the BMFA simulator trailer to come down to that venue such that you can have some additional bits and pieces so you can bring other people in at the same time. But you really need to think about that to make sure that you've got the volunteers, etc., to work that and other things that we're going to go through. Scheduling, really quite key. For example, here, there's no point in me putting on a workshop when Woodspring Wings is on, because quite rightly, everybody's going to go off to Woodspring. They're not going to come and see what's going on with the workshop because, hey, let's get down, let's look what's happening at Woodspring. We want to buy this, that, and t'other. Plan your events such that you're not interfering locally with events that are going on. You then stand a much better chance of actually getting good numbers. Also look at the dates as well. Work with your hosts as to the best days for them. That might be a Saturday, might be a Sunday. Certainly midweek events, you would really struggle with numbers. Certainly, although we've not actually done a midweek session, certainly the discussions I've had when we were looking at when we put these things on, midweek was not looking good at all. Really 25% of the numbers compared to weekends. When we're looking at numbers, so what would we be expecting to see? I mean, really once you're starting getting above 20, it starts to become unmanageable unless you've got quite a lot of volunteers, so you can split into different groups and then come back after you've broken out from those groups and actually gone through the different segments that we'll come to. So really, I'm looking about 20, 24 is really some good numbers. Once you get over that number, then you need to start looking at how you're going to split things out. And I'd suggest you'd use some of your area chief examiners to then actually split those groups out. And certainly within our area, the area chief examiners have come to the majority of our events. So they all know the pattern, etc. So that will work really quite well. This is always an interesting topic, travel and subsistence. Who are you going to pay to come to these events? Certainly the majority of organisers, shall I say. So really you're looking at the key organiser, your pilot, and maybe one or two of the supporters that are going to help you while you're putting the event on. Certainly from our area, we only, shall we say, put in the costs for basically public transport rate, getting to and from the venue for those key people. With regards to those that are coming to the event, we believe that it's really up to either their club or themselves to actually pay their travel in actually getting to the event. But again, within your area, you need to look at how you're going to put that together and really look at that within your funding package. Okay. Demonstration pilots. Really, you've got to be very careful here. We've been very lucky in as much that, or I've been very lucky, the pilots that I've been able to use may not be area chief examiners, but they are pilots that I know. I've seen them fly. I know that they can do the B schedules. I know they can do the A schedules. And I know that one or two of them got little quirks, which are fantastic when you're starting to look at how you want to display and demonstrate each of the manoeuvres. So it's that, for example, they're coming into wind, doing the roll into wind, and they'll hesitate in the section in between to see if anybody's watching, to see what people are going to say. There are other bits and pieces that some of the demo pilots we know. Be very careful to, oh, Fred Bloggs is really good, he's fantastic, and then you get there, and sadly it becomes embarrassing. It's just checking forbid. You have to either yourself or one of your SEEs do that. If you've already sorted out pilots beforehand and you know exactly what's going on, then you don't have that issue. But I know it's happened, and it's really sad because it doesn't help at all with what you're trying to prove. Advertising. So let's start off with the BMFA. So we can actually put bits and pieces up to Andy, for example, such that then comes as events within the BMFA manual, or should I say the oh gosh, what's it called? Help me out, guys.
Or the website, or the
that was the website. I was thinking more of the document that actually comes out every 3 months, 6 months.
Oh, the club bulletin.
Yeah, the BMFA news. Yeah, so coming that. The other thing is that the BMFA will actually, shall we say, you can sign in and actually then you get your lists and all your other bits and pieces straight off. So very similar to what's happening here, where you actually sign in to say, I want to come to this workshop. And then from that, the guys that are actually organising the event can actually see directly how that's coming across.
I think it's essential that anybody who's planning a workshop lets me know, so we can get it onto the Achievement Scheme website, we can get it listed on the Facebook page, and we can even do a direct email to anybody in the area if that's what you want us to do. But we can only do that if you let us know. I am actually thinking we ought to have perhaps a workshop registration form. So if you're planning on doing one, we can create a form that you fill everything in. So we've got all the details, and we can do a lot of the marketing for you. Obviously, contacting your local clubs is probably something to do from the area committee, but we can certainly get the word out to thousands of people very, very quickly and easily these days. The BMFA Facebook page gets 50,000 interactions a week. So, you know, we do get the stuff out there, but we can only do that if you let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think generating a generic registration form is a great idea, though, Andy. I mean, interestingly, I've got the guidance document open on another computer, and I'm looking at it. And we talked in there, you know, going back sort of 10 years or so ago, we were recommending that that areas use the office to send out a mail shot to all of their local clubs. And I'm just thinking how much things have changed. Whereas now so much of it we do, particularly in my area, whereas that was very effective sort of 5 or 10 years ago. Nowadays we have pretty good communication all via direct email to clubs. So yeah, I think a generic form would be great.
I will sort that out in the next few days.
You're a star. That's brilliant, as ever.
And the other people that we've forgotten, for example, don't forget your area chief examiners, your instructors. And as you've said, Duncan, out from your area to all the clubs to actually to bring those in. Also, local model shops, you know, have a chat with them, see if they'll put the sort of little flyer in their window, and maybe sort of ask them if they're willing to sponsor, sort of give a prize for a raffle or something like that. Anything really to sort of enhance what's going on with your workshop. Okay, so arrival, welcome. So arrangements here. So obviously you need to work very hard, or no, not very hard. You just need to work closely with your host to make sure that all arrangements are ready. Have you worked out with them with regards to teas, coffees? Are you going to have a barbecue at lunch, or are they going to provide sandwiches? Again, you know, to me, this should be part of the budget that you've put within the funding arrangements that you've put to areas council, etc. Nobody, I would say, the ones that we put on, nobody has a problem with tea, coffee, and some sandwiches or a barbecue. It really is peanuts, but it's just so beneficial, such that people are fed and watered, but the time in between at lunch, where you're actually discussing in free open dialogue, it's really excellent. The time that you have at lunch and in the coffee tea breaks to have those discussions. Other things that you need to look at with regards to the welcome, obviously you're going to be ticking off all the people that are coming in, checking that those that want to fly have actually got their BMFA insurance and documents. But also you need to sort of look at things like asking the host to provide the safety brief, get everybody up to the flight line so they can see exactly where the pilots are going to be flying, where the no-fly zones are, any peculiarities safety-wise with regards to the field, etc. Obviously, if your demonstration pilot's never been there before, you need him to have actually had a few flights, get his aircraft, his or her aircraft sorted out, so they also know exactly where things are. But I suggest you only do it once. Here's the safety brief, bang, and you're away. Okay. Documentation. So there are numerous ways of doing this. Certainly, we ask if people can actually bring, for example, we're going to be doing the fixed wing A and B. We'll probably do either multi-rotor or helicopter A and B in the afternoon. So we ask them if they can actually print those off and bring them with them. It's always very useful to do that. But certainly as an area, we also ask Leicester if we'll sort of a month or so before this, we'll write email to the to Leicester and say, hey, we're about to put this event on. We're expecting 25 people. Can you send us 25 copies of fixing and also, for example, guidance notes? And they're very nice. I think so. There's the guidance notes, for example. Make sure you try and get the guys to bring a clipboard, a pen. I love to take this with me. When you're sort of trying to discuss maneuvers, if you haven't got something like this, trying to pick up the demonstration pilot's aircraft and say it looks like this, you're going to look a bit silly, aren't you, really? Whereas something as simple as like this, it really aids the discussions, the debates, because you can pass this around. Well, what do you mean by this? And away you go. Okay. Just make sure I haven't fixed anything off my my list. We'll come to it probably at the end, but the feedback form, you need to make sure you've got feedback forms with you. There's another thing which we'll come to, and I'll show you as the score sheet. The score sheet is used, and we must make it clear here, is that the score sheet is solely there to enable the people running the workshop to see if there's anything wildly different between those people looking at the demonstration and giving the mark. For example, you know, a pass to me is sort of an 8, 9, 10, 7-ish. For others, it's 7, 8, 9, 10. So, you know, where are we going to be? So I tend to go with the majority and go 7 to 10. That is a pass. But if you've sort of got 20 people and you've got 17 more or less within the same margin, one each side of each other, for example, if you're really lucky, then really you don't have a problem. It's where you then start seeing, as Duncan and I know from one of our workshops, we've got an area chief examiner who's marking 3 and 4, and we're all marking him as a pass. And you go, well, what have we missed? What has he missed? What has he seen? So it's there solely to educate people as to where we're actually looking to see where that pass come marginal, etc., or is it really so bad? And occasionally the test pilot will do something really screwy to make sure that we get a fail, in inverted commas. When you examiners actually go and do the test, you use the form that's actually within the guidance notes / the test itself, such that we don't want to see people putting 6, 7, 8, 9 against each of the manoeuvres. It's you're looking at across the piece.
Yeah, I think the important point to make, John, is that the scoring system is just a mechanism to allow comparison during a workshop. It's not something that we would normally expect examiners to do in the normal test environment. So it's unique to workshops, really. It
is, and as you say, it's to be used at workshops, not during an actual test or whatever. So yeah. Okay, so we were discussing earlier on, as I said, well, we need to look at the format. So agenda for the day, you've discussed within your area what you would like to focus on. So your discussions have said, right, these are the disciplines that we're going to come out with. And for these bits and pieces, we're going to say, right, in the morning, we're going to do fixed wing A, then B. Then in the afternoon, we'll probably do helicopters A and B. But, you know, why don't you just want to do multi-rotors? Why don't we do FPV? Really, that's centric to what you want to do as an area. So within the guidance material, we've actually got, shall we say, a template. So you can actually just fill in this template and sort of say, right, here's the start time, there's the welcome, there's the safety brief. And then you start going into for example, fixed wing A. And the first thing you need to do is review the guidance notes. So here's the link which we talked about. So I'm just going to click on this, and hopefully you'll see it come straight up to the Achievement Scheme Review Committee, or this Achievement Scheme pages. And what we're now going to do is just look at the standards, guidelines and booklets. And we're going to look at the fixed wing power. So the key point here is that if somebody's got a 2019 edition of this, they've got the wrong one. It's now 2020, and for those that have been on the fixed wing, the multi-rotor, the A, the B, Zoom meetings, will know that we change them every year. We review them from around about September through to November, such that they're ready for publishing on the 1st of January. And we all take segments away so that we know that they've been reviewed, and comments that have actually come from maybe the workshop or general correspondence to the achievement scheme. We've picked them up and then we've done the amendments. So I'm just going to flick through the pages here. So for example, here you can see there's a black line to the left. That identifies that's a change from the previous edition. So while you're discussing with your colleagues at the workshops, you can straight away identify there's a change. That enables us then to make sure we discuss it, make sure that we're all aware of what's going on. So it's really making sure we're keeping people updated as to what's going on. Other things that you need to be doing. So I always go through all these sections here. So the buddy box, the model, all the upfront elements once. I only do that once in the morning, because basically it's the same for whether it's the A certificate, the B certificate, fixed wing, and likewise when we come to multi-rotors, i.e. helicopters, these elements are the same. If we move down and sort of then come to the actual manoeuvres, almost there. Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought it was going to go a bit further. Here we go. So the A test. So what I do here is, this is the first manoeuvre, or I should say, the pre-flight checks. When we're going through the pre-flight checks, I always try and make sure that, for example, there's somebody standing around in the wrong place, such that when people are trying to start up, they're recognising that there's somebody there and they move them away. Also, being very careful that while people are watching what's going on, I like the demonstration pilot to actually say what he's doing. You know, he's checking the ailerons, he's going down the fuselage, he's now checking the elevators, or elevator, the rudder, how it's fixed, checking the linkages, etc. And actually say what he's doing so that everybody can hear. More importantly, when you're actually taking a test, during my discussions before I take that person for a test, I've said, this is what I'd like you to do. I hope this is what you do in your own mind when you come to the field to do the things. Moving on then. So we come to the manoeuvres. Again, what we actually do here, take off, complete a left or right hand circuit. We actually go through each of these paragraphs and we actually talk them through to say, well, this is what's being said. What do we understand by what's being said here? So that we can actually make sure there's the discussions have gone through, any questions have actually been covered before we then actually go out to the flight line to then watch the demonstration. Okay, let's move off that one. So, the other thing that we needed to look at here was the scoring. So again, I'm going to go back to. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back. Sorry about that. I don't want that one. I want to come back to this one. So here, I'm actually just going to take you to the workshop guidance, which, if as Duncan's been watching, there's quite a lot of this that I've been coming from. So when you come down here, I'm basically going through the quick reference list.
Why not?
Cheating. So we're sort of discussing within the guidance. There's the template for the program of the day.
Could you zoom in slightly on the document, John? I think a few people might be struggling a bit. Yeah.
See if I can zoom it.
Move your mouse down a bit. There should be an option there to zoom, I think. There you go. Go. Try window width.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
Is that a bit
That's better.
Okay, so again, this is the flyer that you can put in. This is one that Duncan put out, I think, for one of yours, was it, Duncan?
Yeah, it was one. Well, you can see a few years ago now, but yes, it's just an example template. There's several template documents in the appendices in the workshop guidance.
So you've got all the bits and pieces, all the things that you need to put into it. And then here we had I remember this well, this examiner workshop. And, oh, there's me, Fred Bloggs, wasn't it? Or was it A another? Anyway, so this is really useful because you make sure you've got all the contact details, and heaven forbid if you've got to call it off, you've got telephone numbers, etc., as well as their email, so you can blast things out to make sure it's all good. Okay, so this is what I was coming to with regards to the score sheet. So each of the elements, so you've got, is the model suitable, understanding club rules, etc., no fly zone, role of helper. Then you come to the pre-flight checks, and then we come into the takeoffs, etc. And we've already discussed those bits and pieces. So here it's, from 0 to 10, whatever, and you get each of your guys to fill in what they think those manoeuvres are. Once you've completed that section, you then go back and you then go through each of the manoeuvres, looking at, ask what people have marked. And then from that...
Can we just bring John Collister in for a question about the demo pilot? And are you there, John? Do you want to ask your question?
I do. I haven't been at this game long, and I only know of one examiner workshop day, and I know that the demonstration was flown by an F3A pilot who flew a virtually faultless B. And from my sort of maths exam background, I can't see the point of only looking at the right answers. So you have to, presumably, you try to get them to introduce some errors.
Well, I certainly do. Yes, I mean, there's two edges to that, really. And as much as that, it would be really nice to have somebody say, right, here is a pilot demonstration with errors. And then after you've gone through all this, if you've got time, you then go and ask your demo pilot to say, right, can you give me a 10-10 demonstration? Most of the time, unfortunately, we don't have time to actually do that. Certainly within our area, we encourage our demo pilots to put some errors in on some of the manoeuvres, such that we can then, and as you just said, you can see some of the things, the errors that can occur, where, for example, let's say they're doing they're coming into wind, they're doing a loop. And as they come over, it starts to the wings start to rotate a bit, and he then corrects it. Now, do people actually, or say, do they recognise that as he's come over, for example, here we go, he's coming up, he's coming over, and as he's coming over, his wing starts to fall, but he doesn't correct, and he just keeps coming round. Then the other point is, you're looking for where, that's where they entered. Are they actually coming in at where he entered to then go through? So those are sort of things that you might encourage the demo pilot to actually do. Does that answer your question?
It would. I don't know if you could do it, but would having a video of it so that you could play it back afterwards?
Well, there is.
Benefit.
If you actually look on the Achievement Scheme website, there are videos of the tests.
No, I mean of the demonstration flight. So you could say, right, well, let's look at what you actually did. Do we all agree?
Oh, you could do that. Yeah, I've not actually done that, but that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
What is very, I mean, I've done quite a few demo pilot demonstrations in my time, and I always tell the organizer which deliberate errors I'm going to introduce. That's not there are inevitably some errors that you introduce that you're not intended to introduce, but they're always very useful. But the interesting thing is that you'll have a collective recollection of what the flight was like, and it's very interesting to pick up on the differences that the examiners see. And that's really quite intuitive, actually, quite interesting. Not intuitive, that's not the right word, but it's insightful rather. And as to give an example, one particular demo I did, I verbalized something I was doing, and one of the individuals said, "Oh, actually, you didn't do so and so and so," and I went, "Oh, I think I did." And some of the other guys said, "Actually, yes, he did." So what is really interesting is that it taught me as an examiner that even though you think you're concentrating 100% of the time, you don't actually always take in everything that's happening. And I think that's an important point to make. And that's why we quite often have 2 examiners for a B certificate. And I think that's important.
It's probably a good point to bring in a question from Colin Fretwell here. Colin, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, whereas an F3A competitor, which I used to do, would be looking for perfection, roundness of the manoeuvre, wings level entirely through a loop, etc. We're presumably looking for competence and safety as opposed to that level
Absolutely.
of ability.
Yes, yeah, most definitely.
My point.
Yeah, we're certainly not looking for the sort of 10 out of 10 perfection that an F3A judge would be looking for, but it still has to be recognisable as the manoeuvre that's in the guidance. I think that's quite important. Somebody who flies a very nice, perfectly egg-shaped loop, for example, isn't following the guidance, so it needs to be recognisably circular. But you're not looking for the exact precision that you would for an F3A judge. So as long as it's recognisably the manoeuvre that's asked for, flown safely and competently, you should be okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, also within the workshop guidance, there's the Annex C, which is a feedback questionnaire. And prize draw entry, that's entirely up to you, but certainly it's sort of you need to expand or delete bits and pieces to actually ask the questions that you want to see what, for example, with regards to venues, and actually, that one there, is it far enough, or say close enough for people to want to come? If it's 40 miles or 60 miles away, are you going to get that sort of attendance? So, really use this form or template to sort of move things around. And as it happens, my mouse is just locked up for some unknown reason. There we go. There we go. So hand these out and obviously try and get them back before people disappear off. And then take this back to your area, whether that's going to be amongst your coordinator and the ACEs, or whether you're actually going to say, right, as a committee, an area committee, this is what we've got back. How do we want to tailor things for the next one? What have we learned? What would be good? And use these bits and pieces to, you know, make your events better.
It's quite a good idea for the feedback forms to have a little bit of a prize draw. So you got them all back and then just draw one of them out, and, you know, just don't have to be a major prize, just a BMFA hat or something like that. But it's a good way of getting the feedback forms back.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of that bit. So we've already done the post-flight checks because that was actually part of the performer for the marking. And then you go back into your review and your discussions with regards to how that complete demonstration went, and then you go from there. I've already discussed the workshop, the attendance and getting the feedback back. And really, it's lessons learned from the day, so you can then implement them into your next workshops. It's quite interesting on occasions to see what you get back. Okay, so some of the bits and pieces we've had from our workshops, you know, people saying that they've learned a lot, they've learned something today. It really is. You find certainly the ones that we put on, you know, everybody's saying what a great day they've had, that they've been able to discuss like things with people like-minded, and really had the opportunity to see what the test looks like, what it can do. It's also really good as well for ensuring that both examiner and instructors get a good view of what they're supposed to be looking at. You know, the instructor will then see this is what the examiner is wanting to see from the candidate, to make sure that they're even more successful when they're training their candidates. Yeah, we've had some really good times, and I certainly enjoy doing the workshops and supporting the workshops. Okay, moving on then. So we'll be coming to questions shortly, but there are a couple of things that we just want to announce, really, if you haven't already seen it. But there's an Achievement Scheme Review Committee August fly-in, and the site will be there for us. Basically, we can do what we want. It's up to you. You know, did you want to do some work with regards to let's go through an A test, let's go through a B test. Did you want to take a test? Did you want to take an examiner test? There's all sorts of things we can do. Do you want to do FPC racing? There's all sorts of things. As it says there, there's runways are open, both of them. Camping, caravan, the indoor centre's open. Andy, you
Yes.
really know the site, so where are you going now?
I've just actually put a link to the event details from the Achievement Scheme website in the chat box. So if anybody wants to click on that, it will take you through it. There's the registration form for booking in. Because of obviously the COVID situation, anybody who wants to attend will have to register in advance, so we can get the information out to you. I don't think anybody needs to be concerned about there not being precautions in place to prevent virus transmission. We've got a full risk assessment process going on specifically for this. So once you know, by all means, if anybody's interested in either taking a test or just coming along for a relaxing fly-in, now that we can get out a bit more, by all means, register and come along.
Thank you. And Achievement Scheme Awards. Looking to get nominations for Achievement Scheme Awards, whether that be for the Long-Term Exceptional Service Award or a Certificate of Merit Award. The forms are online. You just need to go to the achievement scheme element of the website and just click along, and the form really is quite simple, and then submit it. Right, now we come to...
I'll put a link on for that as well for everybody.
Thanks, Andy. Because the submission deadline is the end of August for Achievement Scheme Awards.
Yeah. So that's one thing I should raise about the workshops. After you've completed your workshop and you've got a list of all those that have attended, if you can get me the list, which needs to be the name and the membership number as an absolute minimum, we can actually add on to their record that they've attended a workshop, and it will show under the achievements list. So you would need to send me the attendance list so we can do that. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That's useful, because one of the questions that I was asked on the chat during the presentation was, is there a formal requirement for examiners to attend a workshop? And the simple answer to that is no, although it's something we obviously recommend. And the part of the problem is there aren't as many workshops as we would like, so it's difficult for all examiners to be able to attend one. But really, it's the responsibility of whether an examiner is suitable to continue in the role rests with their club. Now, the club may or may not choose to consider attendance at the workshop a part of the criteria for making that judgment. But as John has hopefully got the message across in the presentation today, you know, of all the workshops I've been to, I don't think anybody has ever gone away doing that. Oh, I wasn't really sure that was useful. Everybody's always had a really good time, found it very useful, very, 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 very beneficial. So I just think the part of our reason for putting on this presentation today was just to encourage areas to be able to deliver as many workshops as possible in the coming years, obviously current situation aside.
I know if you're from a club that wants to host a workshop or feels you've got the facilities to do it, let your area coordinator know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Equally, if you're finding that there aren't any workshops in your area, again, a little bit of nudging in the right direction might just get one appearing.
Yep.
We've a question from Craig.
What should we be recording in our examiner logbooks? I write anything and everything in mine. So if I've been to a workshop, I put that in. If I've delivered a club night presentation, I put that in. If I've conducted some tests, I put that in. Anything that you've done in support of the scheme, write it in the logbook. Okay, the sort of preset format of the logbook isn't amenable to some of the things I've mentioned, but just write it in there so that come the end of the year, if anybody asks you, you've got this excellent record of what you've been doing and what your involvement and engagement with the scheme is. I use it because as an area chiefs are obliged to provide a report annually to their area committee, usually at AGM time. And I just use my my examiner logbook as an aid memoir for doing that. So, but I think it's great, just write anything in it.
Answer the question, Craig?
Yeah, that's great, thanks. Yeah, it's
Okay.
just one of those things that, you know, do we need to fill them in? Because, you know, nobody, if you don't do anything, but I get to take your point, record everything that you do. No, that's
Yeah, it's just, you know, even if you've had a telephone conversation with another examiner about a particular point, just so that you're both clear on something. I think that's, you know, anything like that really is all engagement and involvement with the scheme and shows that you're being active. So why not, you know?
Yeah. Anybody else, any questions? You feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Stunned silence. I'll tell you what we'll do. We can stop the recording at this point, I think. So I think thank you for everybody for joining us. I'll stop the recording, but we're still here for questions and everything.